Bez Hashem, today's daf is Masechta Zevachim, number Tzadik Aleph, 91. And we're going to start on the Mishnah on Tzadik Amud Beis. The Mishnah on Tzadik Amud Beis says, we're discussing the order of things. So the Mishnah says, Kol hachatois shebetoira, koidemos la'ashamos. When you have a korban chatas and you have a korban asham, so which takes precedence? So let's say you have to shecht one of them, and the kohen has to decide who to shecht first. So the Mishnah teaches us that the chatas takes precedence over the asham, or even if they're geschachten, if they're already slaughtered, the question is who do you put on, whose amorim you put on the mizbeach first? So the Mishnah says, what do? You put the chatas first. Chutz me'asham mitzorah, except the asham mitzorah. The asham mitzorah is a sheep, a male sheep, along the male sheep, and that male sheep takes precedence to a korban chatas. Hi, Sheldon. We just began.
Okay.
Okay, when the Mishnah on Daf Tzadik Amud Beis, and the Mishnah is describing certain orders. Because if you have a choice between an Asham Mitzorah and a Korban Chatas, the Asham that a Mitzorah brings when he becomes pure, when he becomes Tahar, and the Kohen doesn't know which to bring first, a Korban Asham of the Mitzorah or the Chatas. In this case, the Asham Mitzorah will take precedence over the Korban Chatas. Now the Mishnah tells us, Kol ha'asham shebetorah, any Korban Asham in the Torah. Let's say there's, if you look through the Torah, there are, I think, about 6 korban ashams. So 4 out of 6 are from the animal called ayil. An ayil is a ram, is basically a sheep that's 13 months old. That's it. So let's say an asham, asham me'ila, asham shivcha karufa, asham toloi. So all these ashamis, boim b'nei shtayim, the animal has to be in its second year. Uboim b'kesev shkolim, it has to be 2 kesev. It has to cost a certain amount of money. It has to at least cost a certain amount of money. Chutz, the exception is ma'asham nazir, ma'asham mitzorah. The asham nazir, the asham mitzorah is the exception to the rule that they're actually not a ram; they're actually a baby sheep. Shehein boim b'nei shnasan. They are a year-old sheep. Ve'ein boim b'kesev shkolim, and they don't. There's no minimum how much it has to cost you. You can buy one for $1, and that's fine. So that's the difference. Now, kashem shekoidmin b'hakravasim, koidmin b'achilasan. Just like the Mishnayos before told us what takes precedence. Let's give an example. You have a korban toida and a korban shlomim. Which takes precedence? The korban toida takes precedence. So the kohen should be makriv the korban toida first, and then be makriv the korban shlomim. However, same thing idea when it comes to eating. But eating of the korban, whatever gifts that belong to the kahanim, if you have a korban shlomim or a korban toida, you eat first the korban toida, and then you eat the shlomim. And that's or let's say a korban chatas versus a korban shlamim. So chatas takes precedence over a korban shlamim, and therefore the kohen should eat the korban chatas first, and then eat the korban shlamim. Now the Mishnah says shlamim shel emesh u'shlamim shel yom. Let's say you have a shlamim. A guy brought a shlamim. A kohen has this dilemma. One guy brought a korban shlamim yesterday, left it in the Beis Hamikdash overnight, the animal. And then another guy came today with a korban shlamim, and they both have animals right in front of you. So who should you be makriv first? So shel emesh koidmin l'shel yoim. You makriv the animal belonging to the one that brought it yesterday, the day before, and then you makriv the one that brought it today. What happened? Shlomim shel emesh. You have a korban shlamim that was brought yesterday. And now chatas v'asham shal yom, but somebody brought a chatas and asham today. Now chatas and an asham are more holier than a korban shlamim. They're kachim, right? So which should you bring first? So the Mishnah teaches you that Reb Meir's opinion is Shlom shel emes koidmin divrei Reb Meir. Reb Meir says just bring the carbon shlomim first. Because the guy brought it yesterday, it stayed overnight in the Beis Hamikdash. It's like, it's a zilzul, a degradation to the animal and to the person that brought the shlamim. So bring the carbon shlamim. Divrei Reb Meir. Chachamim are not true. Chachamim says chatos kodemis. Bring the carbon chatos because b'neishu kache kachim. Chatos is holy holies. It's more important than the carbon shlamim. So even if the guy brought it the day before and somebody else brought a chatas and asham today, so the kohen should bring the chatas and then bring the shlamim. Now, the Mishnah teaches you another idea. The parts that are gifted to the kahanim of the animal, let's say a korban chatas, they have to eat the meat of the korban chatas, a kohen. So how is he supposed to eat it? The kulan, all these cases, hakahanim rishonim l'shanas be'achilosan. Kohen could decide how he's going to eat the meat. He could eat la'achlan sluyin. He could eat it roasted, ushlukim, very cooked, so that it melts, so to speak. Umuvashalim, you can cook it regularly. And losis l'soichei tivlei chulin, he could put spices of chulin, the tivlei truma, or even spices of truma, Reb Shimon. Reb Shimon says the kohen can eat it any which way he wants. And in fact, here's the point, that he can even put spices of truma into this meat. Now, if he didn't put the spice of truma into this meat, he could leave the spices on the shelf, and that's it. But once you're seasoning the meat with the spices of truma, basically you're saying that this truma, you only have a day to eat it. So it might come l'day psul. So Reb Shimon says, nevertheless, the kohen could spice the carbon with the spices from truma. This is Reb Shimon. Reb Meir says, Lo yitain l'soichai tivlei truma, shelo yavei truma l'day psul. A kohen should not bring in spice the meat with spices of truma, because you're going to bring the truma to the psul, because you're limiting the amount of time you can eat truma. You'll only be able to eat that as long as you can eat the meat. Now the Gemara starts off with a question. The Gemara asks a question. Now we know, let's say, hi Steve, we just at Tzadik Amid Beis, right just after the Mishnah. And here's the Gemara's question. The Gemara has a question. We know, let's say Shabbos Rosh Chodesh. Let's say you're at your Shabbos meal. So, and you have a choice to say Ritzei and Yala v'Yavoy. So you say Ritzei first, right? Because Ritzei is more common. Shabbos comes up more often than Rosh Chodesh. So Tadir Koidim, whatever comes up more often takes precedence. But then we have a question. Sometimes something is more holy takes precedence. For example, let's say you have a carbon chatas versus a carbon shlamim. Which do you bring first? The carbon chatas, because it's more holier than the carbon shlamim. So, but here the question is, let's say I have a case, tadir and a makudish. Both have something strong about them. One is more common, and there's an obligation to bring it. For example, the carbon oila tamid. And one is mukudish. Let's say one is more holier. Let's say a guy is bringing a carbon chatas. So let's say they shechted the carbon tamid, and they shechted a personal carbon chatas. Chatas is more holier than a carbon oila, let's say. But an oila's tamid comes every day. And now you have the kohen is on the Beit Mizbeach and doesn't know which to sprinkle first. Does he sprinkle the tadir first, which is the oilas tamid, or does he sprinkle the damachatas first? Eizim and kaimim, which should he do? Which should he do first? Tadir kaidim, should he do the tadir? Mishum the tadir, should he do the oilas tamid first? Oidilmo, maybe Makudesh Kaddim. Maybe you should do the carbon chatas first, the Kaddish, because it's more holier than a carbon oila. Carbon oila is although it's kachim, but a chatas brings about a kapara. So maybe you should do the carbon chatas first. So you don't know what to sprinkle first. Tashma coming here on a regular Shabbos to midim kaidim l'usafim. The carbon tamid is comes before the carbon musaf of Shabbos. So you bring the carbon tamid first, and then you bring the musaf on every Shabbos. We go to Amid Aleph, Tzadik Aleph. The Alpha Gav, the Musaf and Kedisha. Even though the Musaf is very holy, so nevertheless, the carbon tamid, which is more common, takes precedence over the carbon tamid, which is more common, takes precedence over over the carbon Shabbos. So we see that Tadir takes precedence over holiness. Answers the Gemara, not true. The carbon tamid on Shabbos is also holy. Ati Shabbos musafim ahanai l'tmidin lo yanai. When Shabbos comes, it not only makes the musaf holy, it also makes the tamid holy. So they're both holy. So that's not our case. It's not an answer to our question. Tashma, come in here. Musvei Shabbos kaidmin l'musvei Chodesh. The Shabbos musaf comes prior to the Musaf of Rosh Chodesh. Now, the Musaf of Rosh Chodesh is more holier than Shabbos because Rosh Chodesh is called a Moyed. It's called a Yom Tiv. And nevertheless, Tadir, Shabbos comes more often than Rosh Chodesh. So Musaf Shabbos come before Musaf Rosh Chodesh. So here's your answer. Tadir takes precedence over Chodesh. Answers the Gemara, Alto Rosh Chodesh, the Musaf in the day Ahani, the Musaf Shabbos, Lo Yahani. When Rosh Chodesh comes out on Shabbos, the Rosh Chodesh makes not only its own Musaf holy, it even makes the Shabbos a holy type of Musaf. So therefore, they're both holy. So you don't have our answer to our question. Come in here. Musaf Rosh Chodesh Kaidman Musaf Rosh Hashanah. The Musaf of Rosh Chodesh takes precedence over the Musaf of Rosh Hashanah. Now Rosh Hashanah is more holier than Rosh Chodesh. Afagav Rosh Hashanah Kadisha, even though Rosh Hashanah is holy, Musaf Rosh Chodesh, which is Rosh Chodesh is more often than Rosh Hashanah, takes precedence. So we see Tadir takes precedence over holiness. And says the Gemara, Atu Rosh Hashanah Musaf Dedeyahanu Musaf Rosh Chodesh Lo Yahanu. When it's Rosh Hashanah and Rosh Chodesh at the same time, which it always is, the Rosh Chodesh makes the Rosh Hashanah makes its Musaf holy, but it also makes the Rosh Chodesh even more holier. So therefore, they're both holy. So you don't have a question. Tosh come in here. Davar Acha, come in here. Beis Hillel says you make the Bayre Pri Hagafen, and then you make actually on Friday night Kiddush. First you make a Bayre Pri Hagafen, then you say Ashikachan Mutzaysa Varatza Vanu. So Birchas Yain Tedira or Birchas Yaimene Tedira, because the Birchas Shabbos doesn't come up so often. It's a holy bracha. It's on Shabbos, but Gafen. The birchas agafen is more common because when you bench and you have weddings, it's there's an obligation to make brachas on wine, so it comes up more often. But the birchas hayoim, the bircha on Shabbos, doesn't come up so often, and the tadir she'ena tadir kaidim. So whatever comes up more often and not often, tadir's kaidim. Afagav the birchas hayom kadisha, even though the blessing on Shabbos is a holier blessing than the bayra pri agafen. So we see tadir versus kadosh. Tadir takes precedent. And says the Gemara, it's interesting teretz. Ati Shabbos birchas hayom hanai libirchas hayom lo yahanai. When it's Shabbos, the bracha that you make Ashakachan Baratzavanu is a holy bracha, but even the Bayra Priya Gafen is a holier type of Bayra Priya Gafen. So it's holy versus holy. So that doesn't answer our question. Our question is when you have Tadir and holy, and they're separate, which takes precedence? Tashma, come in here. The Amar Rabbi Yochanan said, Halacha mispal adam shal mincha v'achakach shemasafin. A person davens mincha and then Musaf. Let's say it's 1 o'clock in the afternoon on Shabbos, you didn't daven Musaf yet, so daven Mincha first and then daven Musaf. Now Musaf is holy, but Mincha comes up more often, so we see that Tadir takes precedence over holiness. Answers the Gemara, Atu Shabbos l'tfulas misarfin ahana l'tfulas Mincha l'yahani. Doesn't that Shabbos only make Musaf holy? Even the Mincha on Shabbos is a holy Mincha. So it's holy versus holy, so therefore you don't have your answer. Again, what we're trying to say is a question, and the question goes like this. You have something that comes up very often, like an oilas tamid, versus a chatas, which is more holier. And now you have the blood of the oilas tamid versus the oilas versus the chatas. Which should the kohen spritz on the mizbeach first? Tashma, come in here. Shlamim shel emes chatas v'oshim shel yaim. Shlamim shel emes koidim. The Mishnah said that if you have the shlomim came in yesterday and the chatas asham came in today, so the shlomim shel emesh came in. You deal with the shlomim of yesterday first. Ha'idi v'idei diyayim. If they both showed up today, the shlomim versus chatas v'asham, and shlamim is a more common type of carbon. Nevertheless, chatas v'asham kadmi, chatas should let him go first. Even though shlamim is a more common carbon, chatas, which is more holier, takes precedence over the shlamim. So holy versus tadir, the Gemara says holiness takes precedence. Amarava motzi kamen. This the shlamim is not tadir, it's common, it's often, but it's not an obligation. Tadir kamabayalam, motzi loy kamabayalam. Our question is, of course, the chatas will take precedence over shlamim because chatas is more holy. But with oilas tamid versus a karban chatas, there's a chiyuv, there's an obligation to bring a tamid oilas tamid every day. So maybe that takes precedence over the chatas. Amalei, so we didn't answer our question. Amalei Rav Huna bar Yehuda Rava ati motzi loy tadir, is motzi not common? Lav tadir, I mean, is just often, and tadir is used interchangeably. But Tanya, we learned in the Brisa, oitzi as a pesach she'ena tadir, v'lo oitzi as a milah she tadira. The Brisa is talking about over there that I would think that a carbon pesach is a mitzvah saseh, which is a mitzvah say you don't bring a carbon chatas for those mitzvahs say, but maybe only carbon pesach you don't bring a carbon chatas because it's ein tadir, but not mila, which is tadira. Now mila is there; it's not like an obligation. It happens when you have a boy, but it's not a consistent obligation. So how did the Bryce over there call Mila Tadira? Mila is Motsui, not Tadira. And says the Gemara, my Tadira, what did Bryce mean calling Mila a Tadir is Tadira b'mitzvahs. It had a lot of mitzvahs, means that there's 13 times it says the word bris regarding the Mila. So that's what it means. It says the name bris 13 times in the Torah. Or yes, Mila, it happens very often, and therefore, when you compare it to a carbon pesach, which is once a year, Mila is like a tadir. But shlamim versus a chatas, even shlamim, which happens a lot, but it's not a tadir. It's not so common, and therefore, we don't know. We don't know. The shlamim versus a chatas, of course, the chatas is holy, is much more powerful than a shlamim. Our question still remains: Kain's stuck on the mizbeach and he has an oilas tamid to spray on the mizbeach versus a chatas. We don't know what he should do. So now the Gemara continues with another question. I will ask you a question. A man had a tadir and an eina tadir, and he shechted le'eina tadir. So let's say a person had a tadir, a oilas. Let's say he had a carbon. I'll give you an example. You have a regular oilas tamid, right? A regular chatas versus a regular oila. Okay, like a regular chatas versus a regular oila. So that's tadir v'she'ena tadir, and he shechted the ena tadir. He shechted the one that's not come. So what do we say over there? Mi amrinam, do you say kiven the shachte, since you shechted the oila, since you shechted makravle, you continue on with it. It's your ena tadir. Oy dilma. Or maybe you give it to somebody else to stir the blood, till you bring the tadir. Then you makrav the tadir. So let's give an example. It's Rosh Chodesh, okay? A guy brings an oila, and they bringing the musaf of Rosh Chodesh. Okay? Now, the guy's regular oila is Ein Tadir. So really, we should bring the Musaf before letting this guy bring his regular oila on Rosh Chodesh, right? But he shechted his regular, his oila. The personal guy shechted his oila. So do we say, hold on, let somebody stir the blood, then we'll shecht the carbon musaf of Rosh Chodesh, finish that job, and then get back to this guy's personal oila, because the regular Rosh Chodesh is more tadir, and versus the einatad of this guy, personal guy, bringing his own personal carbon oila. So what do? Mar Zutra, Bar Rav Huna, Masura Tashma, Shlomim Shal Emesh, Chatas, Ve'ashim Shal Yoim, Shal Emesh, Koidim L'Shal Yoim. You bring yesterday's before today's. Ha the Yoim Dumi the Amish. If Ha the Yoim Dumi the Amish, we're talking about a guy shechted already yesterday's Chatas. Then you finish it up. But if they both came today, basically a chatas va'asham versus somebody shlamim. Okay, so shlamim will call a tadir, and chatas va'asham and ain't a tadir. Nevertheless, the kadam shachtir l'shlamim. If it would happen that you shechted the shlamim, what do? Chatas va'asham kadmi. You would say shlamim, stay back until we're going to bring the chatas from the asham, and then we will go back and bring the shlamim. So you see, there's your proof that there's your proof that since even though you shechted the shlamim, we'll hold everything up, bring the chatas nosham first, and then go back to somebody's shlamim. So the Gemara says, no, Dilma shlamim the emesh v'chatas osham the yoim heichem ishkachas lo the shachtel tevayu ava loy shachtel tevayu tibayolach. That's the question. Maybe it's if you shechted the shlomim and you shechted the chatas, of course you would do the chatas first and then the shlomim. Our question is, if you shechted the shlomim and did not yet shech the carbon chatas and asham, will you finish the job on the shlomim and then do the chatas and asham, or you can have somebody just stir the blood of the shlomim and just do the chatas and asham? That you didn't answer me. Tashma, come in here. Davar acha birchas yoyim tidira, birchas yoyim eina tidira. V'tadish eina tadir tadir koidim. Hachanami. So here's again. Birchas yoyim yain. Birchas yoyim came first. So this was shechted, but birchas yoyim is the Shabbos came first, and yet you're making the bar priyagafen prior to the birchas and Shabbos. So we see from there that even though the eina tadir showed up first, we're still going to do the tadir first. So answers the Gemara, no. Since they're both on the table at the same time, it's as if you shechted it. It's as if you have this obligation of wine right away, before you have the obligation of the kiddush. So therefore, you'll make the bar priyagafen first, and then you'll make the kiddush. Tashma, come in here. Omar Rabbi Yochanan halacha mispala adam shal mincha v'achkach shal musafim. Hachename kiva demotas man tfilas mincha command shechted devay dami. Again, the Gemara has no proof to our case. Amalei Rav Acha berei the Rav Rashi Levina shachta kodim chatzois posel b'nei shnema boy ben abayim. Let's say you shech the carbon Pesach before chatzois, it's posel because it says do it in the afternoon. But koidim l'tamid, let's say you shechted the carbon Pesach before you shechted the carbon tamid shebein albayim, kosher. But what should you do? You should stir the blood of the carbon Pesach until you spray the blood of the tamid shebein albayim. So we see that you hold everything up to do the tadir first. Again, so if you jumped and did the carbon Pesach, which is an einay tadir, before the oilas tamid, you hold everything up, first do the tadir, and then get back to do the einay tadir. So the Gemara says that's no proof from there, because hacham b'mayaskinim kegoin the kodem shachte l'tamid bereishit. You first shechted the carbon tamid first, and you shechted the carbon tamid first, and then you shechted the carbon Pesach, but you didn't sprinkle the blood. So there the Mishnah says, sprinkle the blood of the Talmud Shalbeinu Abayim first, and then sprinkle the blood of the carbon Pesach. But that's not our case. Our case would be analogous to if you shechted only the carbon Pesach, did not yet shecht the carbon Talmud, should you continue on with the carbon Pesach? So you have no proof. Amalei Rav Acha Rishay, Dekenami Achizorak Adam, Veloikatone Achishka Vizrak Adam. It doesn't say that they should shecht the Talmud Shabbein Abayim. It's talking about a case that they actually did shecht the Talmud Shabbein Abayim, but did not yet sprinkle it. And that's why the Brisa says, oh, continue with the Talmud Shabbein Abayim, and then go back to do the Talmud Shel, to do the carbon Pesach. One last thing, and we'll stop. A kohen can eat the meat of his carbon any which way he likes. He could roast it, he could cook it, he could spice it. My tama, amakra, lemashcha. Hashem gave these gifts to the kohen, lemashcha, to be anointed by it. The mashcha means ligdula, that they should feel like somebody special. Keder shamalochem. They can eat it the way kings eat their food, and therefore the kings, eat their food any which way they like. So a kohen can eat his part of the carbon any which way he liked. There's no limit. Okay, we'll continue Be'ez Hashem tomorrow. We'll catch up.
Mm.
Mishnah continues. Amar Rab Shimon, if you see oil, you see Rab Shimon is of the opinion that a person cannot just donate oil for a carbon, or as a carbon mincha, whatever you want to call it. So if somebody walks into the Beis Hamikdash and sees people, the kohanim are eating oil. So did somebody bring oil as a carbon? You don't have to ask what they are. It's the leftover of this part of the mincha. Of the mincha is some of the oil when you bring a regular mincha. Most minchas you actually use up all the oil, but the minchas rikike, all you did was just a smear on top of these matzahs, so there was leftover oil. So this leftover oil was eaten by the kahanim, and of course, the mincha of the loik shemen that was for mitzayra, there was some extra oil, and that was eaten by the kahana, but not that somebody just donated oil to the Beis Hamikdash. It was a part of a flour offering. If you see oil that's being thrown on the fire, here's the mizbeach, and somebody's throwing oil on the fire. So when does oil get thrown on the fire? Ein sarach lishal. You don't have to ask mahu. What's that all about? Elo moiser rekike minchas kahanim minchas kain shiach. If this rekike, carbon mincha belonged to a kohen, the extra oil was thrown on the mizbeach. It wasn't eaten by the regular kahanim, because what a mincha belonging to a kohen was totally burned on the mizbeach. And the whole point of all this, she'ein misnadfin shemen. The Tanakama holds, Rab Shimon holds that there's no such a thing. Somebody donates oil to the Beis Hamikdash as a separate carbon, so to speak. Tafan says misnadvin shemen. One could make an adava, a donation of oil, just like a person could donate wine and to the Beis Hamikdash, and what they would do with the wine would be spill it down. You see here, they spill it down the drain, the safsel. So if somebody brought oil to the Beis Hamikdash, it would be donated as oil, and the question is, what do you do with it, according to Rav Tarfon? So we go to Amid Beis, Amma Shmuel. Shmuel said, L'divrei Rav Tarfon, according to Rav Tarfon, Hamisnad shemen. If someone donates oil, so kamtsai, what you do is you take a scoop of oil like a koimitz, and you throw it onto the mizbeach, ushiyarav nechon, and the rest of the oil is eaten by the kahanim. My tama, what's the reason? Amakra, because the pasuk said, karban mincha, it's a carbon mincha. Melamed just teaches you shemisnadvin shemen, that you could make a donation of oil, and it's an extra word carbon. Now, the extra word carbon mincha teaches you that when you donate oil, it has a din like a regular flour mincha. V'chi mincha, it's like a regular mincha. Ma mincha, just like a mincha. Kam sheshiyar necholin, avshem kam sheshiyar necholin. Hey, come.